Hi, my name is Brent Byrne. I championed the painter Leonard Nelson, 1912 to 1993. In Philadelphia School, an avant-garde he helped form in the 1970s in Center City, Philadelphia. I'd like to begin by asking a question, and that question being, what things in life are worth fighting over? I'm not referring to patriotism or nationalism, but causes like fairness and equality. In 2012, I was faced with this question, and how I responded led to a major art brawl in Center City, Philadelphia, which was pasted on the front cover of a major Center City newspaper called the Philadelphia City Paper. And the title of the article is "One Man's Crusade Against the Philadelphia Art Establishment." My story begins in 1999 when I assembled a tight-knit group of investors to purchase the Leonard Nelson estate from his widow, Alma. At the time of that purchase, we were completely unaware that the Philadelphia art establishment had already awarded Nelson's style of color-field painting, which you can see behind me, to another artist, Warren Rohrer. In 1995, the main bastions of power in art in Philadelphia coalesced around him by calling him a major painter. The article was authored by Edward Szanski, chief art critic of the Philadelphia Inquirer. In it, the chief executive of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, Anne Harnoncourt, is quoted as saying that Warren Rohrer is one of the best people that she knows of to talk about painting with. Further down the article, one of the city's major art collectors, Daniel Dietrich, is quoted as saying that Warren Rohrer was honest and that Philadelphia was lucky to have him. Further down the article, Marion Locks, Warren Rohrer's chief gallerist since 1974, is quoted also attesting to Warren Rohrer's honesty. Now keep in mind, in 1999, we were completely unaware of this knowledge, that the art insiders have already awarded Nelson's style to another artist. Good news would come our way despite all this. In 2001, with the publishing of this book by Professor Sam Hunter. Professor Hunter taught art history at Princeton University for some 30 years. He was the New York Times art critic in the late 1940s, covering the avant-garde as it was then emerging in New York City. He was covering the likes of Jackson Pollock, Willem de Kooning, Mark Rothko, etc. He would go on to co-author the book Modern Art and curate in 1956 the first Jackson Pollock museum show at the Museum of Modern Art. He was also a prolific book writer, writing many artists' firsts on major artists like Robert Rauschenberg and Hans Hofmann. His book caught the attention of an art critic in Philadelphia, Ed Szanski's partner, Victoria Donahoe, in a rave review in the Philadelphia Inquirer, where she called Professor Hunter an Olympic-class athlete of American contemporary art. She would also call Leonard Nelson one of Philadelphia's most important colorists in the metropolitan area, and also call him a genuine exemplar, even though he was overlooked. At the time of that writing, Victoria and Donahue knew that there were other painters painting in Nelson's style of color field that were accepted and carrying more regard aesthetically in Philadelphia, and she knew Nelson was being overlooked. In reading this article, I noticed that it only printed in the suburbs of Philadelphia, which caught me by surprise. I was wondering why it didn't print in Philadelphia. Nelson was an institution in Philadelphia. He taught for some 30 years at the Moore College of Art in Center City. So I reached out to Edward Szanski, chief art critic of the Inquirer, asking if the paper intended to reprint Victoria Donahue's article in Center City. And he immediately quipped back to me, no, following up with a question, what's new about Nelson, in a very condescending tone. I wasn't expecting an immediate rebuke of my phone call. So I replied by saying, well, there's plenty new about Nelson, starting with the new text by Hunter on Nelson. And then I followed up by stating Nelson taught in Center City for some 30 years and more, and that many felt that he was one of the most important abstractionists ever from Philadelphia, being that he was the sole link in the city to the New York School of Art, which came about in the 1940s and 1950s in New York City. So he ends the conversation by saying, basically, we did as much as we're going to do on Leonard Nelson, and hung up the phone. Of course, I was shocked by all this, thinking, well, your partner wrote this glowing article, what's up with the immediate rebuke? Keep in mind, at this time, I was unaware that he called Warren Aurora a major painter in an article he authored in 1995, 4 years before we bought our collection of Leonard Nelson paintings. Not all was bad. The story would continue in 2002. I offered to gift the painting to the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And they replied back, sure, we'd like to come out and visit you at your collection in Wayne. So that's what they did. They sent out their 2 assistant curators to see, what painting they'd like to accept or not accept into their permanent collection. And they came into the warehouse that we had in Wayne, holding up this book like so, stating, we'd like to see this painting. And this is Nelson's signature style of color field that he started painting in 1974. This is a 1975 painting, but you can see from here the style of dark to light, suggesting landscape, but not directly. In other words, you don't know if this is water or field or mountains, but you have the sensory that it's landscape. Well, the 2 curators would end up selecting this painting to reserve, which is a gorgeous 1976 color field. And I agreed and put the painting aside in the warehouse, waiting to hear back from them. So the meeting ends. I'm excited. It was a good meeting. They were excited about the painting they reserved. 2 weeks later, I get a call from one of the curators that visited the collection, stating that they decided to go ahead with their plan, and as a matter of fact, they wanted to hang the painting on its own wall in the American wing. So not only were they excited about bringing a painting of Nelson's into the collection, but showcasing it right away by hanging it on its own wall. Of course, this news was very exciting to me, and so much so that the curator that I was on the phone with suggested that I not get too excited, because their plan first had to be approved by committee. We hung up, conversation ended, and a month later I get this rejection letter from the museum. Thanks, but no thanks, but due to storage and insurance reasons, we cannot at this time accept a Nelson painting into the collection. This was quite disturbing to me, because here it is. Their art experts are arguing for recognition of Nelson by bringing a painting into the collection, but having it being rejected by a higher up power. Well, that power was Anne de Harnoncourt. Now, keep in mind, at this time, in 2002, I was completely unaware that Anne de Harnoncourt's money was on Warren Rohr by attesting to how great this artist was and genuine of a painter he was in the 1995 article that Ed Szymanski authored. So, still confident in Hunter's scholarship on the artist, calling Nelson trailblazing, formidable, path-breaking, a major painter, etc. In 2003, the following year, the Philadelphia Museum of Art represents in debut exhibition the art of war and roar. And in an article that Ed Szymanski wrote up on the exhibition front page in the art section of the Inquirer, he shows photos of war and roar paintings that look shockingly similar to Leonard Nelson's art. And immediately I picked up the phone and dialed Ed Szymanski's number and the Philadelphia Museum of Art as well, asking why there was no credit. 2 years before, Hunter had written this glowing text on Nelson, on the first page, stating that Nelson was a primary contributor to a new and influential style of American color field painting and how deserving of recognition he was. And I personally sent copies to Ed Szymanski in the museum and Anne de Harnoncourt. Well, I never got a response or a phone call or anything, and I tried repeatedly to reach out and call and try to force them to, own up to the reasons why they failed to credit Nelson in the War and Roar exhibition in 2003. Overtop major scholarship on Nelson by a renowned art historian. They never replied, which was upsetting to me, and it raised a red flag in my mind. I was unaware, of course, in 1995 that they all coalesced around War and Roar and credited Nelson's style to him. Now, War and Roar first started in painting in Nelson's style of color field in 1977, 3 years after Nelson, and this was all through literature that the museum put out on War and Roar, saying that in the summer of 1977 he drove to Saskatchewan, Canada to find this new style of color field that he never painted in before. So life goes on, time would go on. Nelson would start trading at Sotheby's on the heels of Sam Hunter's scholarship. In 2010, the renowned art gallerist Wally Finley, New York City, would decide to represent our collection in New York City and globally. They were very happy to do that. We were very appreciative of their interest. But the fireworks really start coming at me in 2012, and this is where things start to heat up. In early 2012, I get a phone call at night from a friend of mine who's down at the Rosenfeld Gallery in Old City, Philadelphia, and they opened up a show for Philadelphia painter Murray Desner. And I said, you need to come down here. This guy's paintings look just like Nelson's. So I ended up not going down to the city to see these paintings live, but I went online immediately. And I saw right away the similarities between his art and Leonard Nelson's. Murray Desner was an art professor at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. He taught art 6 blocks away from Moore College of Art, where Nelson was teaching in the 70s. And Warren Rohr was, as a matter of fact, teaching art at the University of Arts, which was formerly the Philadelphia College of Art at the same time as well. So all these artists are within a very close range with each other. As a matter of fact, 6 to 8 blocks of each other. And so I end up reaching out to Murray Desner and his gallerist Rosenfeld, asking why there wasn't any credit extended to Nelson. Nelson's an acclaimed painter for the very style he's painting in, and stating that in 2001, Hunter acclaimed Nelson for this very style that he was preeminent in. And he never responded. Neither did the gallerist. So I let it go. I kind of thought back to the museum in 2003 and their silence when I asked them why they didn't decide to credit Nelson in that show. A few months later, a friend of mine in 2012, on another matter, instructs me to get in touch with the Woodmere, because in his mind, the Woodmere had no idea who Leonard Nelson was, and he thought that they should. And that's what I did. I ended up sending an email communication out to the curator of the Woodmere Museum, Dr. Matthew Palczynski. And I stated in that email that Nelson predated Warren Rohr and that the Philadelphia Museum of Art had given him a debut show in 2003. And I attached to that email this beautiful JPEG photo of Almond Moon, painted in 1979, which is one of Nelson's best works. Tonal, gradated, luminous, striking red depiction of landscape, color field, suggesting landscape, but not directly. And he replied back immediately, stating, indeed, Nelson prefigured Rohr, Desner, and others, and he found it odd that the Philadelphia Museum of Art didn't own one of Nelson's color fields. And he also found that the Museum of Modern Art not owning a Nelson color field odd as well. And he asked for information. He wanted to know more and more about Leonard Nelson. And I felt great at this point. Essentially, the curator at the Woodmere seconded what Sam Hunter had stated 10 years before, in that Nelson was new to the style of color field, and in fact he was trailblazing, and that his style was influential. And it was just a great moment for me, and it signaled to me that I needed to get more vocal over Leonard Nelson's style of art in Center City. Well, as it turns out, the Woodmere Museum in the fall of 2012 would roll in the debut exhibition, Murray Desner. And that Dr. Matthew Palczynski was no longer at the museum. And this was happening very fast. So I reached out to the director of the Woodmere Museum, William Valerio, and I asked him point blank, can I expect a Leonard Nelson credit in the upcoming Desner show? And I stated that the same sort of things, that Nelson was the subject of a Sam Hunter monograph attesting to his preeminence in the style of color field. Well, it turns out that like the Philadelphia Museum of Art in 2003, the Woodmere Museum refused to credit Nelson in that show, and the show would go on without a Leonard Nelson credit. So at this point, my fire is fully ablaze inside me, and I'm kind of hurt by the whole thing, personally. And I go online searching for possibly other artists that may have infringed on Nelson's style of color field without paying credit. And sure enough, this artist, Stephen Eastock, pops up on Google, and I started checking out his art, and I find that he's moving up the Center City grapevine in art to acclaim, and that he credited Rohr for his style of art. And he's getting all kinds of love from the Philadelphia insiders. And I'm thinking to myself, geez, this is bigger than one artist copying another style of art. This is actually an avant-garde that has roots in Sam Hunter's scholarship. Recall that Nelson was called influential and a primary contributor to the style of color field, and that it could be bigger. It could be a larger narrative than one artist versus another. In fact, it could be the seeding of a school of art. And that's what happened. Hunter, back in 2001, wasn't aware that there were all these other artists painting in Nelson's style. He knew that Warren Rohr was there from visiting the Locks Gallery on Washington Square and seeing his art there. He never offered to write a book on Rohr, however. He offered to write a book on Nelson. So I formulated the concept of Philadelphia School. And all the painters are painting in this atmospheric style of color fields, suggesting landscape, but not directly. But Nelson was out first in 1974, showcasing this art all over the city. He had 25 one-man shows from the time he retired in 1977 from the Moore College of Art to the time he died in 1993. He was prolific, and he always showed his latest style of color-filled paintings in his shows. So, in ending, I'd like to say, yes, I was hurt. There's a lot of disregard towards my artist. It was knowingly rolled out into exhibition that other artists had infringed on my artist style. But because of money and politics, Nelson's name was left out of the narrative or the storyline on these artists. And there's good reason for it. Originality is everything in art. Without it, you'll never achieve the type of recognition in debut exhibition that these artists received. So that little nuance, that they were imitating another artist was just left out for money reasons. But out of the ashes of this story emerges this flower called Philadelphia School. And it's huge. It puts Philadelphia on the map globally as being a city that can incubate new art, much like New York has done for so many years, since the 40s in contemporary art. Philadelphia, for the first time, now has its own avant-garde, which I think is a wonderful story. And I like to end there by celebrating the birth of Philadelphia School in 2013. Thank you for listening.